If you want happy and healthy Monstera Deliciosa plants like this one, then keep watching. I'll be talking about the origins, care tips, and how to propagate them so that you can help your plants thrive. So the Monstera Deliciosa is native to Central and South America, and it has been introduced to other places around the world where it can grow outdoors. It is an incredibly popular houseplant, as I already said, again used around the world as an indoor plant, and that's what we'll be talking about today as we talk about the care instructions. These are fascinating plants, I think, in their natural habitat, in that they are hemiepiphytic or hemiepiphytes. So very simply, that means they spend part of their life growing on the ground and part of their life growing on something else. So these actually spend their early life as saplings growing on the ground, and then gradually move over to find a tree or something to grow up, and then use their sort of vining stems to grow up the tree as they get larger and move towards the light. It can also be considered an invasive plant as well, because it does grow incredibly fast with the right conditions. So if you do want a plant that grows fast and fills your space, then this is a great option for that. Maybe not if you've got limited room, unless you can train it up to keep it within a certain remit. And that does also give it really great propagation potential. If you do decide to cut it back, you might be able to make many more plants from it as a result, because it's a very easy plant to propagate too, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. So I'll run through the full care needs for the Monstera Deliciosa so you can help your plants thrive, and I'll start with the light needs. As I was talking about that just a moment ago, these wonderful large leaves are there to catch as much light as possible, so that gives us an indication that these plants really like a lot of light. So anywhere with bright indirect light would be perfect to help it grow to its full potential and really get the sort of full definition of the leaves developing. If you put it in a space that perhaps doesn't have enough light for it, in somewhere with a north facing window or maybe further back where it doesn't get enough light, you might find that the growth gets stunted, and even the leaves might not fully develop with the fenestrations, and they might stay a little bit like this one, the sort of spade or heart shape without the fenestrations. So that's a good way to tell whether or not it's getting enough light or not, and if it's not, then maybe move it a little bit closer to a window where it gets a good amount of natural light throughout the day. So next we'll talk about water, and as I said, this is a really easy plant to care for. You can generally water when the top of the soil is dry, however do try and keep a bit of moisture left in the soil if you can. But if you do forget to water, it is a very forgiving plant, so you can just water when you next remember. If you have forgot for a while, it does show signs that it needs water. The stems and leaves might start to droop, or the leaves start to curl a little bit, so make sure that you do give it water if that's the case. Just like any houseplant, it needs water to survive, and you don't want to damage the plant by forgetting for too long. Now that leads nicely onto soil. So if you are potting up your monsteras, they like soil that has good drainage, maybe a little bit looser than other houseplants as well. So you can use a general houseplant compost and then mix in something like perlite or even bark to loosen up that texture and provide good aeration and drainage. So for humidity, as I said, they're really easy to care for plants, and they're generally okay with the natural humidity you'll have in the home, unless you've got a really warm home, dry home. If you have the radiators on a lot, if you've got a lot of drafts or airflow that could cause dry air, then maybe you do need to increase the humidity for them. If they're not getting enough, you might see signs of crisping or drying around the edge of the leaf or the tips, and then you can use things like a humidifier. It's probably the most obvious way to increase the humidity, or putting them amongst other plants to increase the localized humidity around them. If you do, of course, any additional humidity isn't going to hurt them, it'll probably help them thrive a little bit more, but as I said, they're not that fussy and they're quite hardy, so they should be okay without any additional efforts to increase the humidity, unless, as I said, you've got a particularly dry home. So for temperature, as I always say with houseplants, they should be okay with whatever the temperature is in your home, unless you've got a particularly cold home. So these ones are a little bit more forgiving than maybe other houseplants that like warmer temperatures. While these have an optimal temperature of maybe 20 to mid-20s degrees Celsius, that is, they can go down to about 15 degrees Celsius, and in their natural habitat or outdoors, where they are planted outdoors, they can even go lower than that for short spells of time. So they are quite hardy, and unless you've got really cold spells or cold spots in your home where you might need to move them, they should be quite happy wherever you put them in the home when it comes to temperature. So there are a couple of other care considerations for monsteras, and that is cleaning the leaves. Because the leaves are so large, they can collect a lot of dust, so all you need to do is just with a soft cloth and a bit of water, give them a wipe down occasionally just to make sure you remove any of that dust or dirt. You can also buy leaf cleaning products, or you can make your own if that's what you like to do, and then use those. Just make sure they are safe to use on the plant. If there are any new products, test it on a bit of the leaf before you use it on the whole leaf, so you know that it's not going to cause any damage. But as I said, water and a soft cloth will be fine for cleaning the leaves. And then lastly, use a heavy pot to make sure that they stay stable wherever you put them, as they can grow quite large. They can get very top heavy, so do have the risk of toppling over. So make sure you use a heavy pot, or if you don't have a heavy pot, maybe put some stones or something heavy in the bottom of the pot that can help weigh it down and keep the plant stable. So one last point to note is support. So these plants often grow on moss poles. You'll see them in stores with moss poles in the centre. And you can do that maybe if you've got younger plants, it's easy to do that, or if you've bought one that's already against a moss pole, then you can continue extending that and keep guiding the plant or tying the plant to the moss pole if you need to with florist tape or twine, for example. If you've got a bushier plant, that can be a lot more difficult to do because you could have different stems going in different directions, as I do with this one. I've let this grow out a bit, but I like this more sort of fuller looking plant. I think it looks a lot lusher with this sort of all the leaves going in different directions, a lot bushier. So I've got stems coming up in this direction, I've got stems in the middle. So this probably wouldn't benefit from a central moss pole, as I'd be fighting against where the plant is trying to grow. So what I will actually do, I've been inspired by something I've seen online where they've used instead multiple poles to provide support around the plant. So I'll probably use maybe a teepee or pyramid system with poles across the plant at different points, and then that'll at least provide support for the different stems that I've got while keeping the plant within the vicinity of the pot, but still allowing it to grow where it wants and letting all of these leaves sort of come out and give a fuller looking plant. So the next thing we'll talk about is propagation. So if you want to multiply your monsteras, then it is incredibly easy to do so with these plants. The most common method is perhaps stem propagation, so I'll show you how to do that. And you can also use air layering, which is effectively stem propagation but doing it while it's still attached to the plant, so perhaps giving you a better chance of success. And then you've also got division, where you actually split the plants up from where they are in the soil. So you split the plant and then you've got bits with growth on and roots attached as well, and then you plant them up separately depending on how much it's spread out in the pot. So I think the easiest method is, as I said, the stem propagation, which I'll just show you what to look out for and what you can do, and then you can multiply your plants for free and grow your collection, or maybe even gift them to someone else. Okay, so what you're looking out for with stem propagations is a piece of stem that includes a leaf node. So where the leaf comes off the main stem just here, this is a leaf node, so this is a good spot for propagation. And if you've got an aerial root or bud coming off here as well, that's a good sign that this would be a successful propagation where roots could grow off this. So we're looking for a leaf node on the piece that we're going to cut off. So if I wanted to cut this just here, maybe an inch or two below the leaf node, that would be a really good propagation. I could put that in water and wait for roots to grow. Then once there was a collection of roots maybe about an inch long, I could then pop that up. Alternatively, I could put it straight in soil, keep the soil moist, and then wait for roots to grow. Maybe move a little bit of the soil out the way occasionally just to see if roots are developing. So that can be done in water or soil just by cutting it off and then putting it in either medium and then potting it up into a larger pot once it has developed roots. If I wanted to, as you'll see on this piece that I've got, there is actually this sort of internodal space there between two, and there's another one here where a leaf's coming off the stem. I've got an aerial root just here, so if I wanted to, I could also cut that just here and have either two cuttings or a larger cutting. Now this is not a Monstera propagation, but it is a good example of stem propagation, and you should be seeing the exact same thing with your Monstera stem cuttings. So this has been put in water, and I've actually left this far too long. To be fair, this needs potting up desperately. You can see the piece of stem just here, and where the leaf node is, all of the roots coming off around that area. So that's exactly what you'll be looking for with your Monstera cuttings. So if you do decide to do air layering instead, that could be a good way to reduce the risk of taking a piece off the plant and it not being a successful propagation. So you can actually do that while the piece is attached to the plant. Get some growing medium, whatever you're using, sphagnum moss, compost for example. You put that around the same area, the leaf node, and then you use something to hold it in place, maybe cling film, a plastic bag, or you can even get actual specific devices that actually clamp on and hold that medium in place, and then you wait for it to develop roots. But because it's attached to the mother plant still, you don't need to worry about it drying up or running out of nutrients, because it's still getting all of this from the mother plant. And then once it does produce roots, you know you can cut that off with some confidence that it's got its own root system and it can sustain itself once it's potted up. I did also talk about division, where you can take it out of the pot and then remove some of the soil, see where the growth of the plant is and the roots, and then cut it down so that you've got a piece of plant with good growth on it and also a good root system on it, and then you can pot them up separately. So this is just one of many videos that I'll be making on plant care for specific plants, so if you have found it useful, consider subscribing for future videos on different plants. I've linked one at the end for the Philodendron Birkin and Birkin Pink, so you can watch that next if you want to learn more about it. And if you haven't seen the Philodendron Birkin Pink, it's a relatively new plant, so you can check that out next. If you'd like me to cover any specific plants, then drop them in the comments below and I'll add it to the video list. And also if you've got any questions, do the same and I'll respond to everyone. As always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.